Marin Gunderson. I'm the playwright in residence here at Marin Theater Company.
And I'm Kate Cortesi, and right now we are rehearsing the world premiere of my play Love at Marin Theater Company.
The same theater.
So great.
So exciting.
I'm so happy to meet you.
Thank you for being here. I'm so delighted.
You're so cool and widely produced.
You are also so cool and will very shortly be widely produced.
I'm trying to catch some of your cooties right here, America. Yeah.
Part of what I'm so excited about your show is it is the world premiere. And that is one of my favorite things because being in this business for so long, you realize the incredible just carbonation and electricity in a rehearsal room for a brand new play. And I want to know about what that's like for you here. You just mentioned you were doing a bunch of rewrites, and what's it like being in the room with this new play and with you?
Well, this play has been workshopped quite a bit.
Yeah.
With this director. So a real gift of this process is that we came in, the director is Mike Donahue, and we came in on day one with a pretty robust shared understanding of what we're trying to do, which with this particular play is super helpful because this is a very slippery play. You know, you could lazily call it a Me Too play, but one of its main sort of modes is to undermine some of those mainstream narratives around that we would read in the press around the more famous Me Too stories. And so there is a lot of parts of it that are funny. Mm-hmm. And the parts that are in the office around, you know, when these Me Too kind of transgressions are occurring are very joyful, mm-hmm. are very consensual, very sexy. Mm-hmm. Like it's taking the victim perp dynamic and jumbling up some of those feelings that we would associate with the victim perp dynamic. And it's if you get it wrong by a couple degrees, it's very wrong.
Yeah, right.
And so it's good for the two people, you know, the writer and the director, to really be on the same page about what we're trying to do, so that we are giving the actors as much freedom to play, to do what they have to do to find this sort of slippery, interesting tone. But also that ultimately, with as much playing as happens in rehearsal, that we're aiming at the same target.
Sounds like an actor's dream.
It is a really good show for actors. It's hard, though. All of my plays, when I see them in rehearsal, I'm like, oh, this play is harder than I thought it was every time.
So sorry.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But I think that is where it's like working with designers, that you give them a really awesome design challenge or sound, or certainly with acting. I think that brings out really interesting choices, and it's so active and alive for an audience. Do you find that?
Yeah. They're very empowered, you know, in certain directions.
So can we just do like the thing of going a little bit about what the play is about?
Sure.
And maybe also what you think is super awesome about it.
Great. In that order, the play is about, it's told from the point of view of a woman named Penelope. When we meet her, she's in her late 30s. She's got a job. She's got kids. She's got a husband. And she's surprised to be invited to coffee with her former coworker. And it turns out she's been asked to join a story that's going to run in the New York Times about her former boss, who she had when she was in her early 20s, in a gap year between college and medical school. And it turns out she did get involved with that boss. In fact, she had a very passionate love affair with him. And she does not at all regard it as like as an abuse of any kind. In fact, it's like this kind of very special memory of hers that sort of formed who she is and made her feel really powerful. And he remains a friend, and he's friends with her husband. And so she's like, wait, what? There were others? And you're calling it a Me Too? So her journey emulates, I think, that moment that a lot of us had, you know, in 2017, where the Me Too hashtag started trending and where lots of people were sharing stories, and, you know, Jodi Kantor's stories were coming out in the New York Times. And everyone's sort of looking back. You know, we don't like change the culture and then just step forward into it. We sort of look back at what the culture was when all of this very unacceptable stuff was relatively acceptable or known or turned, you know, frowned upon, but that's about it. And then you sort of look at the way your life was interacting with that culture and wonder what you were doing and wonder what you were a part of, and what it's a very reflective, sometimes very jarring reminiscence. And so this play is that.
Oh, that's great.
And so then she's meeting these other women who are pretty unequivocal about feeling really bad about it. She, you know, when she knew them when they were young, she didn't relate to them. Now as an older woman, is there a sisterhood that she neglected. And so it's her journey throughout this community across 15 years of coworkers.
And we meet the gentleman in question.
We meet the gentleman in question. He's the male lead.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a good part. It's a hard part. And every scene you see him in, he's charming and powerful and wonderful. And so, you know, some of the questions of the play are about sort of structural, his structural place in the workplace. Yeah. And it's not just about women feeling bad. It's about how they are seen and how they are treated.
And it seems like how they understand each other.
Yeah.
Which is, it seems like that's a big part of being a woman.
Yeah.
Much less when we've described it as Me Too or, you know, Women's March and all of these kind of things that we have structure and name for now. But throughout my life as a woman, I was either kind of embraced a sisterhood or felt the absence of it.
Yeah.
And kind of feeling that space. I kind of long for plays like this that help me name it and see it and reflect it on stage. So it's in all its complexity. Sometimes like you just surrounded by a bunch of jerks, and sometimes you like, oh, these are my people. And then sometimes like I'm a boys kind of girl, and you know, like I'm the tomboy or I'm the like one girl surrounded by the boys, and you can feel power in all different situations. But I'm grateful for plays like yours that kind of give us a different kind of way to understand it and way to see it on stage.
Yeah, thanks. I'm grateful for my play. I think. Well, I'm grateful to be able to do it.
Yeah. And then
although, you know, Marcia Norman says this hilarious thing. She's like, don't be grateful. That's for the women watching this. Yeah. She's like, have gratitude, but don't act grateful. Like, anyway, I just think that's a fun thing to say.
I don't know if I disagree. I think that sounds right. I mean, you can be whatever you want.
I know.
It's true.
I just like, speaking of going against the main narrative.
It's like not saying I'm sorry so much.
Yeah, kind of. It's like, oh no, your play is here because they're trying to get something from you too.
Because it's fucking awesome.
Don't be grateful. Be
cursing.
Be mutually beneficial or something.
Yeah.
You know.
You
anyway,
proud.
Someone said that to me last night.
To know you.
And I'm just meditating on that.
So can we talk a tiny bit about what are you doing here? How do you come to write plays? I know you also teach writing, theater and screen. How did you, like little baby Kate, when did baby Kate know that she wanted to write? And
girl, I didn't. Baby Kate did not. The only clue that Baby Kate was a playwright is that whenever I was alone, I talked to myself. And that, like, I really was I live my life in dialogue when I'm alone.
Great.
And I really like to be alone in dialogue. And so that is how all playwrights are, actually.
The same.
No, I think it is universal, actually. But I thought I was going to be a painter or a scientist. Like, my whole family is science and engineers. And then I wrote some plays in college because... I went to college in New York. There was a kind of slam poetry, one-woman show type of theater scene, which was so cool. I could, 19-year-old Kate, could not believe she was at these clubs in New York City, seeing this. I was like, I have found my life. This is perfect. And so I ripped off a Sarah Jones play, and it was actually really good because it was all monologues. I didn't have to plot anything. It was like that story weave was absent from this structure. So it happened to center all of my strengths and ignore everything that's hard about this for me. So it just was like this extremely successful thing. It became a radio play. I mean, it was bonkers. It was a college, but it kind of sold out and became a big thing on campus. And I cast my friends. And I put it on for my friends, and it was great. And so then I did that a few more times. I didn't know what the word site-specific, I'd never heard this word before, but I did a site-specific play in a bar about a bar, and college students drank and were in the, at the play, and we kind of mingled among them. It's probably the most, theatrical thing I've ever done.
It sounds pretty cool.
And then I stopped writing plays. The shameful part of my story is that I was like, oh, I'm a writer, and, Paula Vogel never touched my shoulder and said, "Do you know you're a playwright?" And this is what theater is. I might
have touched her shoulder once.
Yeah. Our shoulders are virgins to each other, and it is my loss. But I wish someone had protected the theater impulse in me because I just thought, oh, I'm a writer. oh, Tom Stoppard Tom Stoppard, I found out, was rewriting uncredited for money. And I was like, well, my word, if Tom Stoppard cannot make the living he wants to make as a playwright because he's doing TV stuff, like he's script doctoring. I was like, I should learn how to write a script. So I spent 10 years working in education in New York while also trying to teach myself screenwriting and getting like just enough of a screenwriting career to keep going, but like not enough to call it a career. But I had a fancy agent. I, rewrote my friends' indie movies, like, just a little enough to keep it hanging on. And I even started teaching it. But funny enough, motherhood is what saved me from my life and my getting off the path. And my second kid was born, and I was in the crisis of having 2 young children. Which is a crisis, among other things. But I think there's no way it's not a crisis. But I had a baby and a 2-year-old, and I wrote a play, and I didn't tell anyone about it. I wrote it really quickly, or I mapped it out, and I rewrote it a lot. But that structure I came up with on the first day, and like that was the first thing I'd written where I was like, oh, this is who I am as a writer. This is what I want to sound like. And because I had not had a theater education. I didn't know any actors. I didn't know any directors. I didn't go to the theater that much. I think I read a Christopher Shin play, and that was when I learned that, like, plays could not be about British people, and, like, either in Shakespeare or, like, hiding under the settee, but it's like they could talk about a Nirvana album in a play or something. You know what I mean? Like, that wall came down. That, like, oh, you can mention contemporary music and have... like cursing and casual language on stage.
Corsets are not necessarily.
So, and so then I wrote a sort of Staten Island Arthur Miller play based on this family that I tutored when I was, working for this education company in my 20s. And I was like, why did I stop doing this? And I was so embarrassed that I stopped doing my favorite thing for 10 years. I couldn't even tell people I wanted to be a playwright. If I wanted to be a playwright, I had mislived my 20s. And I was like deeply afraid of that mistake when you're 31 and you messed up the last 10 years, it's the entirety of your adult life. Like it just felt like such a big mistake. But then a miracle happened. I don't even remember submitting it, but that play won the Princess Grace Award, which is a 1-year residency. I mean, it's like a great award. But and it's cash. They like gave me a big check. It was a fancy gala in LA, and I was like, "Oh, this is money, and this is like fanciness and a gown, and I got my hair done." But actually, the year New Dramatist, like Madeline George, Chris Diaz, Kui Wen, they were like, "What do you write about?" And I was like, "Nobody's ever asked me that before." They were like, "What do you have to say? What do you need to say it?" And to be treated like an artist by other artists, that year has changed the way I talk to people. I mean, I am constantly being the friend to people that I needed in my 20s, you know what I mean? And that's how I teach from that, correcting that mistake and stuff. And then I haven't stopped writing plays since. And I've actually been like, on a nice steady track. I write whatever I want. I go see every play because I never went to graduate school. So I'm like, what can this form be? And if you look at my plays, it's kind of like starting in the 50s and getting up to, it's like a kind of formal survey of like 1950 to 2020, and so that like formally there's quite a range. But I think there's a bit of, some essential Kate Cortesi in every single one. That's awesome.
And so where does love land in that world?
Funny you should ask. So I kind of started, Love is a little bit of a return to a more conventional play. For those of you watching who know the play Betrayal by Harold Pinter, I love Pinter very much. Betrayal is actually not my favorite play of his, but structurally it was my blueprint for this.
Great.
And I had an idea, I sort of went out with my friend and was at a bar and ranting about the kinds of Me Too questions that I was asking myself and my girlfriends were asking ourselves, which weren't the egregious, like assistant professor groping you under the table or like, more violent things. Like a lot of us have those stories. But the ones I kept thinking over were like consensual, powerless, voluntary, confusing. There was a power imbalance, but that was appealing. And I was like, what is that in this framework? Like, how does the rubric help us become clearer about those kinds of feelings and boundaries and things that we participate in? And I was saying this to my friend, and he said, well, you should write that play. And I was like, oh, no, I'm not going to write. I'm not going to. And then like 2 nights later, I woke up in the middle of the night and I gridded the structure to Betrayal because I just taught it. So the scene structure was memorized because I just given a lecture about it. And I just filled in my own scenes. And then I wrote that really quickly. And I was teaching playwriting at NYU. It was a month-long intensive class. And I did all the activities that I made them do. And I was like, gosh darn it, they work. I was like, do this exercise.
I'm a good teacher.
I was like, for real, the premise holds. And so then I wrote the draft with them. And me and my students and I, we all had a draft within a month. And then I actually abandoned the Betrayal structure. And it is no longer that. It jumps around in time, but that structure no longer served the piece. But I was shopping formally I was shopping from Pinter.
Great.
For this one. This play's a little more conventional than the one I'd written just before it, which is a little more batshit.
I love a batshit play. I love a conventional play too.
You need them both.
Yeah, got to. Gotta have them.
And the conventional makes the batshit, and the batshit makes the conventional.
There you go.
Conventional.
Yeah, they like have a little high five.
Yeah.
They walk in different directions.
Yeah, they throw each other into relief.
Yeah. So how do you write? I mean, you're just coming off some rewrites. Are you like a 5 a.m. person? Are you a late night person? Is it conversation with directors and actors that fill your brain and then go, or is it different every time?
I wish I had a better answer to that question. I feel at this point in my life, I mean, 2 years ago, I don't even know what my answer would have been, but I feel I trust myself I think like the smartphone of my brain is the best device. And that if I keep thinking about something and I walk around thinking about it and I scribble about it, that even if I don't go back and check my notes, that like what I'll remember, that like the process of thinking and brainstorming and reading and talking to my friends and interacting with the news and dealing with my kids and all this stuff that is my life, if I just keep scribbling about or thinking about an idea I have, I do think the process of my brain and my memory will filter something structurally cohesive. Yeah. And I think I spend a long time writing in my head. And when I have a structure, I go to the page and I try to pin down that structure, and then I start writing dialogue. But sometimes the dialogue, there'll be a little snippet of dialogue or a scene, and I'm like, I don't know much about this play, but I know that this is in the play, or this captures the impulse. And I think it's just like a question of like capturing impulses. And when you get lost in your own mind, to return to those impulses, and as long as that impulse is still hot to you, that can always be your compass.
That's right.
But it's extremely mysterious. I don't know where ideas come from. I don't know how I'm good at what I do. I do think I'm good at what I do. But when you feel bad at it, you don't know if you're ever going to be good again because you don't quite understand how it works. And so there's a real act of faith.
Yeah. But you talk about structure a lot, which I do think is such a nice scaffolding to have. In terms of like the engineering and going, well, I know I can engineer a thing. I know what structure is and how it works. Yeah. And I so appreciate that. That was one thing that unlocked my story and when I was in that kind of formative time, grad school and beyond, because I felt similarly, this is such a mystery. Sometimes I like get it, and sometimes I'm just spinning on an idea. And it was understanding dramatic structure and feeling this kind of legacy of structure throughout all of storytelling since we were primitive creatures. Yeah. There's a way we tell a story, how we know when it's over, how we know which character to follow, how we know if they've gotten a goal or not, what a goal is, why do we care? And it's kind of going back to that.
Where do you think you learned structure? I mean, I know it's because you say it's always in stories, it's in you, but like, I mean, where did you pin down
formally,
structure?
Like to find the words, it was in grad school at NYU, But I think going back to all of the stories I've ever been told, I mean, kids' books that your parents read you, that I read to my kids now. The reason why I throw a child's book across the room is because I'm like, this is terrible storytelling. The rhyme structure is bad. The emotional architecture is just crap. throw the little train book against the wall. So I think there's something about this constancy that human beings are just flooded with stories for our entire lives.
Yeah.
And being able to finally, one, realize that, and two, go, oh, that's why these are good and these are crap.
Yeah.
And I like these and I don't like these. There's reasons for those things. And so whenever I feel like I don't know what the heck I'm doing, I do take stock and take great comfort and inspiration from going, okay, but structurally, dramatic structure wants this. Now I can reject that. I can spin it. I can
subvert it or undermine it.
Yeah. But like, at least I can go there.
Yeah.
And it's refreshing when you were saying, like, if you can pin down a structure, because that's the big moment for me of going, oh, I have to write this play now because I know the ending. I know a version of an ending. I know how you can unravel that and re-ravel it, and there you have a thing that may not be the structure the whole time, as you say. The betrayal structure kind of fell away, but to get that first draft, it's a massive feat.
It's incredible. And it's actually the worst, for me, that's the worst writing gets, is getting to the end of that first draft. I just got to the end of the first draft of a new play that's a Unities play. It's a time, one time, one place, one action, one story. I'm like, it might have a few actions. Maybe that part's a little muddled. But but I was structuring that thing. I mean, that's the first time I ever did that. And I was like, this is baffling. Like, what? How do we knock down events? And it's two people in the same room the whole time, so no one else is coming in with information from outside. Yeah. And, I mean, to find the structure with those constraints was extremely challenging. Mm-hmm. And so what is a load-bearing wall in that kind of story? Mm-hmm. There is one. Mm-hmm. There is momentum. There is surprise. There is and suddenlies. Mm-hmm. But they've got to already be in the room somehow. Yeah. And they can't just come out because a character decides to arbitrarily speak. You have to create a structure that creates a new event that then means you can't have gone. Now we can't go back to where we were in the play before. You can't travel backwards.
That was I and You, which we premiered here. That was the exact same. Two people in a room. Wow. It's all one time, one night, one thing, and trying to
what were some of your breakthroughs structurally? Mystery,
secrets, lies that gradually become forced out into the light, and a lot of secrets and lies. That was a movie, right?
Yeah, we would have no stories if people didn't keep secrets.
No, that's what I keep telling people. The greatest character development is people lying.
The shadiness is helpful.
Bad behavior is what drives great theater.
Bad for life, good for theater.
Good for theater. I know people like being nasty.
Good for life, bad for theater. Also, I like there's a lot of like therapy conversations happening on stage, and I'm like, no, I don't want to see someone apologize the minute they've been mean. Yeah.
Yes, being too good, being too thoughtful, being too prepared. And that is one of the things when I teach, that's one of the things that I talk about is like, your people can't do the things you know are the right actions because they're in an extraordinary situation. So what they would normally do, sure, you would apologize right after you're mean. But you're in an extraordinary situation. You either love them so much or hate them so much or just aliens have just landed or whatever. And that means that like, I do not have time to apologize for my shitty behavior. Yeah. I have to go. Or, then suddenly I care. I want to know more. It's not over. The tension is still held.
Yeah.
So again, I'm from the South, so my Southern, mother telling me like, here's how you behave, here's how you are nice to people, here is what politeness and hospitality is. I'm like, all of those are terrible things.
And they're not really true, and that's why our best writers are our best writing tradition are Southern writers, because there's so much underneath the surface of that veneer, that choreography of...
Well, the South is weird, because either you put your crazy on the front porch, or it's up in the attic. Either way is kind of interesting. Like, why is weird grandma just being allowed to walk amongst us and say her terrible things?
We're Italian,
or so what the hell is going on upstairs?
Scream our crazy all the time.
Southern people can do that too.
But there's no front porch, but it's just thrown across the dinner table.
Lots of you have to break us, but once you break us, the anger does not stop. Again, good theater, good storytelling. How's all that? We're so